country's economic problem is?
Obviously we're in a huge economic crisis, and the question is, was the $700 billion that we put together here in Congress just last week, a $700 billion bailout, the question is, was that the right thing to do? Now, I took a stand against that based on principle and a few principles that I have. Number one, I don't think it was right that we had individuals that are going to make huge amounts of money, huge profits off this. We just hear from Secretary Paulson that a lot of this money is going to go to foreign banking firms. It's leaving the country to shore up foreign banks. To me, there's something just a little wrong with the whole picture. Having said that, there's a case to be made that if this wasn't done, then we'd go into some kind of economic collapse or meltdown. I guess we won't know. There's also talk now that this $700 billion was simply the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end to the crisis. That this may balloon and they may be coming back with their hand out for more and more and more. Some estimates are talking about $5 trillion more in bailouts just to cover the meltdown going on globally. What this does, in my estimation, and this is where my concern is, we bail them out, we provide this money. Where does the money come from? Well, foreign sources, bonds, you name it, there's lots of ways of getting the money. And quite frankly, the Fed can order the printing of more money, which would inflate the money supply, which devalues the currency and what it's worth. So my concern is, as we shore up these banks, we devalue the currency by increasing the money supply, and we have either two issues that could happen. We could have a hyperinflation issue, or if people are simply not in a position to buy because jobs are being cut and things happen, we could have a hyperdeflation. Neither would be good for the country, and we'd have a real issue there. So the question is, what do we do? And I think fundamentally, because I can't do anything, I'm not in Congress, and I won't be sworn into Congress until January. There's not much I can do, but I think as a nation we ought to seriously look at reform of several institutions in this country. Number one, the Federal Reserve. I think we as people ought to be looking at how they operate, how they do business. It's a semi-autonomous organization. It's kind of, they do their own thing. As long as the economy's happy and everybody's happy, nobody really wants to look at that. But there's not much oversight over the Fed from the federal government. And I think we ought to be looking at that. We ought to be looking at the oversight over some of these mega banks and mega corporations. We started a process of deregulation in the late 90s, early 80s, and as a result of that, combined with laws that promoted housing for people that probably couldn't afford houses, those two things kind of collided, and now we've got a problem. The Republicans blame the Democrats for everything. The Democrats blame the Republicans. And I'm saying both sides ought to take their finger and point them at themselves. Both are to blame. And instead of trying to do something to really shore up and strengthen our economic system in this country, what they do is they're pointing the finger of blame and nothing's getting fixed. The root of the problem is not getting fixed. This is more of the top of the trees. But down at the root is where we've got to be looking. So when I get to Congress, my plan is to find like-minded individuals in Congress that are willing to go at the root of the problem, make serious reform in how we do things in this country as far as our economic system.
Good.